Welcome back, everyone, to the holiday edition of Let It Cook. This is our last cooking of the year. We took a little break from cooking, but we are back. This is the show here on the vscode channel where we break down all the latest in agentic development inside of your favorite code editor, vscode. We have folks all around the globe coming in, and Jonas hates the intro music, and we're going to totally fix it one day for sure. That is for sure. People from all over the place tuning in. I am super excited today because the team and the community just dropped agent skills all over the place. And I have two of the most amazing people in the entire world with me today to break it all down. Mr. Harald and Tim, how's it going, guys?
Hey, how's it going?
It is going great. We have our holiday thing happening, and I love it. And I'm not sure how I feel about it, but I love it. We'll get rid of it. Don't worry. We'll go back to some classic streams. So we have like tropical snow. Oh, you can't even see the tropical snowman. Let's see. We'll pull that somewhere. We have like cozy night back here. Wow, this is great. We have this StreamYard just going crazy with the stuff. So well, we have a Boxing Day. That seems like something. I don't know what that is, but that sounds great. Sounds like something maybe Tim knows about.
Interesting. Don't worry about it.
Yeah, holiday. All right, we'll go back to classic VS Code over here. This is great. Well, I hope that everyone is having a great December. I cannot believe it is the end of December already, and I refuse to go on break. And it's because Harald and Tim won't let me, to be honest with you, because they're like, hey, we're dropping a whole bunch of goodies and we got to try it out everywhere. Gentlemen, I have to know, what is an agent skill? I have no idea. So you guys just dropped it on us. And I was just like, okay, Eleanor, who I've been following for a long time on Twitter, have been like this huge, I'll drop her Twitter in here, huge believer of agent skills. I haven't really been following them at all, because I'm too busy writing custom instructions and agent MDs and all this other stuff. So what are agent skills and why should people care about them? I don't know. We'll start with Harald.
Yeah, I can take a stab. I think, yeah, both Eleanor and Simon Willis, our kind of influencer community, have been really vocal about them. Simon has some good blogs to figure out like why they work so well for him, and Eleanor as well. So I think the excitement is there's a ton of agent primitives out there, how to customize your agents, and agent skills really came out as a really simple and effective way that just works for people, and it's easy to reason about, it's easy to create. And basically what they are at the basis, it's a markdown file in a folder called Skills.md, and it has a description that tells the agent when to include it, and then that means the agent, like as it sees like, oh, like this description cell tells me if I should look at this when I think about front-end development, it loads up the skill. But then the magic is, so that's like one progressive disclosure aspect of agents, that they can figure out what they need at the time of running and then load it up. And that's agent skills has that kind of baked in as a primitive. But there's more progressive disclosure that you can actually in the folder, you can have additional files that then that markdown file can also point to. And those could be scripts, those could be just documentation, there could be images even, and just anything that the agent then can pulls in based on the description for the skill and can go deeper. So it's very easy to kind of bundle it up in a very minimal description, and then a little bit of expanding into the prompt as it loads the skill.md file, and then even like, oh, now you actually have a full workflow and you can look at all these other files. So I think that's what agent skills are. They are very close to existing primitives we already have, but they do have this sweet spot of nice distribution through this folder system.
Nice. How do you see them, Tim?
Yeah, I definitely agree. I think the thing that excites me the most about agent skills is one of the things that kind of Harald was pointing to there, like the fact that it basically enables you to use your context window more effectively. You know, I'm sure a lot of people here watching this are very familiar with that idea, but basically what context window is about is effectively like you can only send a certain amount of information to the agent and to the model. And after that, you have to start cutting things and truncating things and summarizing things. And up until now, probably, you know, if you wanted to teach the agent how to do something, the solution you would be likely to reach for would be putting a load of stuff in your custom instructions. But then what you end up doing is like every single time you do anything in that project, then polluting the context window with a load of stuff that's just not relevant for the thing that you're trying to do right now. So whereas with agent skills, what I can do is kind of create these little packages, these little boxes, you know, that of a specific thing that then gets pulled into the context window when I actually need it. So I can effectively balance across the two. So for me, what I would do is use custom instructions for things that are like basically going to be relevant every single time I use the agent. And then agent skills are a great fit for things that are a little bit more specialist, you know, like routines or advice or workflows that are going to be useful some of the time, but not all of the time.
That makes sense. So what you're saying, Tim, is that my custom instruction that I have here that is very, it's kind of built up over the year, if you will. It just keeps going. This isn't a best practice. This isn't a Tim approved best practice.
Yeah, and I think until now, this has been like how custom instructions have turned out for many of us. And I think there's a bunch of things in here that you probably would want to keep in your custom instructions. So like, as you were scrolling, there was a section on like coding guidelines. That's probably something that I'd be tempted still to keep in custom instructions because it's so like broadly useful for many, like almost every activity you're going to do with your agent. Whereas when it gets to more specialist things, you know, I think there was a section on like how you do CSS, for example. Yeah. That's something that could be a good fit for a skill because when the agent gets into the mode of like, hey, now my job is to write some CSS, it can then pull in that relevant context, and you can help to have a better balance of like what things are exposed to the model all the time and what things are exposed to the model part of the time. But this isn't the exact science. Like we're all going to be kind of figuring out together and as a community, like how we split between these different primitives. And, you know, this is very new. So if right now you've got this massive custom instructions file, don't feel bad. I've got that, like lots of our projects at GitHub have got that. And we can all use the holiday break to like figure out how to pull these things apart and deal with the spaghetti.
Totally. Yeah, I think that makes a lot of sense. I think the other thing that was really fascinating, I was building some skills last night, was that I had a bunch of information in my custom instructions that were about running like CLIs or applications on my machine. Like for example, I have this website, visualstudiowallpapers.com. It's a very beautiful website that you can switch between purple and blue on here. But I vibe coded this out, and you have like all these different desktop wallpapers of all the different things inside of here for like the 50 million user stuff, right? So you have all these different like VS and VS Code themes in here, which is really cool. And this is all vibe coded out. But I have all these super high res images over here. And I actually had this in my custom instructions last night, which was using Image Magic to do all of my imagery sizing. But I was passing that context every single time I was just making a CSS change. So I put that into a skill, right? Here's how you use Image Magic. Here's how you do like these PowerShell scripts that I run, right, to actually do the different resizing. And as I'm building these out. Else it has to figure it out itself. It has to figure out how I want it to be done and different guidelines in here. And that's sort of like was the thing that you were just saying is this was stuck in my custom. This entire 150 lines, maybe it's 100 lines of code or markdown were stuck inside of my custom instructions. That's just a shame to waste that context window. So this is an open standard, right? This isn't like a Microsoft thing, correct?
Yeah, it's currently, so it's originally created by Anthropic, was Claude Skills for around since October. Like that's what's interesting about the timeline. People were excited about this in October, and now it's December, and it's already something that the community adopts at large as something that we all should kind of do as a best practice because we got so excited. So it's an open standard that defines the very basics of just the files. I think it's early, so I think that's what I want to call out, is that there's more questions on like, oh, maybe could be a shared folder for all of these. Like, what is the story for the script runtime? Like right now, a lot of the Anthropic skills won't just work out of the box in any other client because they're optimized for kind of the VM that Claude.ai runs potentially. So there's a lot of assumptions people make when they build these skills on where they run and how they run. So there's probably more either in this spec or related work to kind of make it easier to just create it once and share it out as well, right?
Very cool. Yeah, and it looks like here there's some front matter, so name, description. I'm assuming the models are using that to understand like what they're calling. Is that correct?
Yeah. The basically what you have when you have a list of skills that the agent is aware of, that means just they're in the system prompt, kind of the agent harness, Copilot or Claude gave the agent a list of here's all your skills. And it frames it as basically as soon as you start, before you start a task, check this list. If you need anything like this specialist knowledge that will make you better, please look at it. The prompt crafting, blah, blah, around it, like to really, really look at it. And then it just, the main information it has is basically the description on when and how to use it. That's what you should think about when you kind of prompt craft the description. And then it gets the name and the location of the skill.md. That's kind of the main entry points.
Very cool.
Yeah, my experience of playing with this so far is that all the normal prompt crafting stuff that we've all got used to continues to be really important. So, you know, the description you give in that prompt matter is going to make a big difference to whether your agent decides to pull in the skill at the time you want to pull it in. And then the instructions you have inside are also going to have a massive impact. So when I was kind of playing around with skills, I found, you know, if you just write it as kind of advice, then I found the agent would decide, you know, sometimes I'm going to listen, sometimes I'm just going to ignore you. Whereas writing it clearly as like, you must do X, like this is the process you have to follow, then I saw a lot more success. So all the stuff you've learned about generally prompting LLMs or writing custom instructions is going to work really well here as well.
Here's what I did last night is I copied this URL, the specification, and I went into VS Code and I was like, hey, I opened it this nice and wide and I zoomed in. This is how I code. And I said, hey, I want you to extract skills into my skills folder and use the specification link, basically like go analyze my custom instructions, see if I have skills, and then break them into skills. Basically, that's what I did last night. And that was actually pretty helpful because like you said, Tim, I think what I love here, I feel like this documentation was almost written for models to consume because like good, poor, like, you know what I mean? Like required, not required. You know, it's like very, very, very nice of exactly what it's going to do and a good example of it, which I think is delightful. And we have our own documentation. I'll put a link there for all the customization. So people were asking a lot of questions about custom agents and instructions, which are kind of like rule files and prompt files and all those things like that as well. There's all that stuff, which is cool. So you can dive into this as well, which is great. And I love this as like skills versus custom instructions. When would you use it? When wouldn't you use it? You know, you can expand this table. That's a quick fact for you. Very nice there. So all sorts of things. And our skills can live in the Claude skills or GitHub skills, which is nice. We're going to talk about that as well. Before we get into a demo, I'll also point out Awesome Copilot, which is a great GitHub. And there's now, I don't know, did you do this, Harald? Was this you, Harald, that did a skills?
It was me, yes. So it is the day before, and then the awesome people from Awesome Copilot helped me get it in quickly. So
Very nice. We have a skill, web app testing. We'll go through that as well. But let's just get into it. Harald, I know that you got a sweet demo. Kind of like, let's do like a hello world. A lot of people asking like, where's it at in VS Code? Can you enable it in VS Code? And Tim's going to show the CLI and Cloud Agent as well. So I'm super excited about that. But yeah, let's, you want me to bring up your screen?
Yes.
Okay. I always like to ask first. Uh-oh.
You need to do that.
Okay. You're good. Okay. You're good.
Please.
Okay.
Appear. There you go. My powers. Yeah, so this is insiders, so that's really important to call out. The latest and greatest of agent skills. The thing actually called agent skills is in insiders. If you open the VS Code stable, which is the blue icon, then you will still have class skills. So that's just the speed of development that's happening here. Probably gonna pull it into stable beginning of January, just to make it easier to use. So you will see that happening. So basically it's this use agent skills setting has to be checked. And then we're going to look into basically .github/skills, the Copilot folder and new user folder, and still look at cloud skills because that's kind of the ecosystem where people have skills right now. That's just the folder, and it's the same for the coding agent and CLI as well. And we also link you to our helpful docs that I also wrote up. So yeah, once you have that enabled, basically it falls into the list of things that the agent already looks at. So the agent already has, in this case, I have a workshop open that you can find on YouTube from 2 weeks ago, and it was like basically used all the primitives we have. So we have prompts for one is just to set up the repo, which is a really cool prompt. We have agents.
Can you control plus for me one time?
Plus.
Command plus. There. Oh, perfect. Oh, I can read it now. Thank you.
Just yell enhance. Right. Okay. So we have these agents, these instructions, and then prompts and anything else. And yeah, I guess we don't have an instructions file in general. That was part of the workshop, create one. So you can imagine that one. But I have this one, which is really cool. This is actually based on a blog post by Anthropic that they have, is improving front-end design through skills. And they basically have, and we all ran into this. As soon as we go into vibe coding mode with Claude, you will get purple gradients if you're not careful. So just make me a beautiful website. It's going to be purpley and it's going to have gradients. And then you can really see the model's design aesthetics through some of these design choices it makes. So this is just copied from this blog. And I love this prompting style of kind of helpful prompting sitting next to my, hey, you tend to converge toward generic on distribution output and front design. People call this AI slop. I'm sorry, but you do this. And so it's a really cool system. But then now that we have skills, this could be a skill. This is not something necessarily you need to have an instruction. It doesn't describe your code base. It's just this is how you make better code in general. It could be used maybe doing code review. It's when the code review agent on the GitHub side can see actually I shouldn't use overused font families. And then once I see a design with that, you shouldn't use inter roboto here, maybe pick something with different. But it's not necessarily code review. It's more of a design review. So let's make this a skill. So you're going to take this whole thing. You already see it. This has a name descriptions. So, and this is what custom instructions and Copilot already gave you. So we can do it here. We can just copy this file and make it. We're in .github, so we can keep staying here and make a new folder, skills, and copy this in. Now we got to rename this to frontend design /skill.md, and we got the skill.
Wow, skill made.
Skill made. Yeah, this is now only for GitHub Copilot agents. So if we want to have it across all maybe other agents we're using, we want to maybe put this into .claude. That's where right now most look, and hopefully in the future there's one place to put those. Or I can put them into my user folder. I also have this is actually the way I work in my user folder for Claude skills. I just basically have it in VS Code. So if I just open this one, I have it open here on the side. These are all kind of Claude skills I was trying around playing around. So one is actually a skill creator. That's what you did. Just pointed to the website to make a skill. There's a skill to make more skills. So, but that's one way to manage it as well. So, but to look at like now I can actually go in and ask it, which skills do you have? Classic question. It would actually have a bunch of ideas on what skills it has. It understands its tools also as skills and a few other things. But there's a skills section, and actually, so it now has front-end design, which is mine, and then the other stuff I have from the user folder, right? And the way now to look behind the scenes a bit, this is the chat debug log, which you can enable inside this chat debug view, right? That's that view. If I click into it, we can kind of look behind the scenes briefly to see skills down here. So that's how it looks like in the prompt. It's just, here's a list of skills, name, description. So as Tim said, the description really matters to make sure this is used at the right time. And as I said, for front-end design, it's like, use this skill when user asks to design build, like give it context when to use it and what it provides, so the agent can figure out how to use it. Yeah, so that's the basics of like the simple skill. There's no additional context here. I could pull in maybe a design reference guide in a markdown file if it really wants to go deep, maybe some examples. But that's kind of the basic just skill.md version of this.
That's really cool. I like that you had the sort of user level stuff, like, hey, I'm doing this all the time in a bunch of different areas, and I want these skills to be available. And previously, you can even have custom instructions that are doing that as well. But again, that's a lot of overhead compared to really what I'm understanding from you and Tim is that it's really just understanding that front matter metadata. So the context is really shrunk down very small, basically.
Yeah, these things shouldn't be necessary. And then also to make them transferable, right? You can have a tailwind for skill. I could move this out now. It's mostly about how to write it. I think that's still a discussion we still have to have. Like when to use instructions versus skills. I feel like instructions are still more helpful in the way when they purely focus on how to write good code, because then they can help you to pull it in, for example, into code review as well. So any coding related agent, if you have a good custom instruction set that has like a domain instructions file and a domain specific instructions file for the repo, you can still automatically pull those in, because I also have these apply to systems in the front matter and say like, oh, you wrote tests. Like, let me look at my test instructions and then review that those pass quick. You don't want to necessarily have a skill that describes how to basically write the best tests in that folder. That should be a probably custom instruction for now. And then skill can maybe talk about how to think about tests, how to like have a workflow to write good tests. Maybe it's about test-driven development. So there's still probably some convergence happening in this primitive space to figure out like these are the right path. Right now, there's definitely, if you think about one use case, you can probably find this a solution for that use case in 4 different ways.
Very cool. Awesome. How does it know how to run the skills? So you put it into subfolder, front end design, Skill.md. Like, how does it know to actually run those?
Yes, that's what I showed here, the log for the prompt. It basically, what it tells you when the user asks you to perform a task, use the read file tool. So this is what happens here. If I go in here and ask it to, for example, redesign the app to be a cozy coffee shop design.
Ooh, I like that. That's my jam.
So it gives context. It will hide this left side. Make it pop. And it should look at the skill.
So we're assuming here that like just how like we previously like load up a bunch of custom instructions, that it would now understand, hey, here are the skills that I have going on, and then here are the skills that I'm going to apply. Basically, like it's not like a script that it's running. I wanted to like, sometimes I think when I first saw skills, I was like, oh, it's gonna like run this script. Like that's not what it's doing, right? It's not like a script that it's running. It's a set of it could be scripts, it could be information about it, but it's a set of of anything. Like, here's how to do this thing, and then incorporate that into your context window. Is that correct?
Yes, it's more in the, or at least out of the box, it's more context than scripting. Like in some cases, it is very scripting heavy. Like the other example I'd like to show that makes a lot of sense is, where's my test skill? This one is maybe easier to understand in a way that, so you can just ask it, like as soon as you install a skill, basically just ask it, I added the skill, can you make something cool with it? And that's really like the most basic example. Like you don't necessarily attach the skill, but it's just natural language. Like there's a skill, look at the description, load it up, and do something with it. And that's also the way I like to use MCP server sometimes. I just install MCP server. I don't want to look at all the tools. I just want to ask the LM, like, this is a MCP server, like what can it do? Because the tools often describe specific workflows and specific, like, use this tool first and this tool, and the agent can figure it out and then have a much nicer onboarding to the MCP compared to what I would do. So in this case, we can see basically it loads up the skill.md, which is in my folder. And that's an interesting example of a skill description. It's very long. It's massive. So it's like a full-on, basically how to do algorithmic art workshop in a Markdown document. It's like you're reading, you think about algorithmic philosophy creation, and you express it with P5.js. So you wouldn't, that's what people have to be careful about. Like if you just imagine, oh, this is a cool skill that just describes how to do P5.js, it's not that. It's full-on algorithmic art mindset in a box. So you have to be, this is what makes, I think, skills tricky, just like it makes custom agents tricky. You have to understand what's behind the prompt and how it's meant to work. But this is like deeply analytical of understanding algorithmic philosophy, the conceptual seed, but then it's very practical as well, because it has this example of your file in here as well of just a starter template to go from. And that's why it's so good in the end to create this, because it has like a good starter template. It has this reasoning approach and how to create interesting examples. And then because it has files and context and a workflow, it just comes up with something really cool.
Very cool. I think Bill here in the chat was saying, are we to think about it more of like a metacognitive recipe? Like, kind of like you're saying, like, here's a recipe on how to do something, like, I think or one of us said the way you think about it, right? Here's the way to think about processing a PDF. Here's a way of thinking of doing algorithmic art. Is that kind of like recipe style?
I think that's where I see many of the example skills also going from Anthropic. It's more about the LM couldn't do this before. The agent couldn't create PDFs before. The agent couldn't create PowerPoints before. And then the skill basically is like, here's a script to create these things. If you have this over here, so it now loaded up, we're going to run the server. So it create the file. It runs the HP server from Python to preview it. And now it's actually going to open the in editor preview to show it to us.
Wow, cool.
And there we have the beautiful bioluminescent depths.
Yeah, so kind of like before, if you didn't have this skill, the model, right, whether it be Opus or GPT or whatever the model is, right, it would look at its corpus of data or like understand it, and it would try to figure out what it interprets, right? But what we're doing is sort of guardrails and how to think and how to construct it. But if you're building and you're in this repo, I think the important part is, like you're saying, is this application can be doing 1,000 different things. But if you throw that all into your custom instructions, that's going to be parsed every single time, kind of blowing your context window for there. Where now we're like, hey, we're doing this specific thing. We're creating this art. So let's deploy load up this one thing into the context window and then do it. I think that's what Tim was saying before. So I think like breaking it down, like we've broken custom instructions into like, hey, here's how I want my C#. Here's how I want my CSS. Here's how I want this thing. But now this is like, here's how I want you to think about CSS in general, but don't do that unless you're actually doing CSS work.
Yeah. It's definitely leaning into something. So what does capabilities in an agent mean, really? And it could be something that the agent usually gets wrong or cannot do it all. Like if you ask it to make a PDFs, it probably finds 10 different ways to somehow make a PDF, and maybe one of them succeeds or all of them fail. But this is kind of, in this case, this is the Anthropic/Skills repo on GitHub. And it has all the scripts that are proven to work with the right dependency, the right packages already baked in. So it just raises the chance from 1 out of 10 to 10 out of 10 that it gets it right. Once you ask it to make a PDF, it's like, I have this skill. Let me look it up in my skill database, my capabilities, and it will find just the right amount of information, just the right amount of scripts to do this right.
That's cool. And like you're saying here, there's not just markdown files, there's more code in there too. Like you can have script files, for example, like C# script files, Python script files, JavaScript files, and they're kind of like tiny little helper utilities to deploy. Tim's shaking his head. I'm getting it right. If Tim's approving, then I feel smart all of a sudden. Thanks. Am I getting it right, Tim?
You are.
I like that. Cool. This is awesome. Yeah, I think this is cool to see too, and I hope Awesome Copilot grows into this. And it's cool just to see the Cloud skills there. That's awesome. Awesome. This is Harald. This is fantastic. Should we hop over to Tim to see it in the CLI and Cloud Age, or you got more, Harald? Are you good?
No, this is all I had. We're all
That's
done.
cool.
Tim has
Amazing.
much cooler stuff.
Well, it's Tim, so only high expectations are high.
Thank you, Jason. Howard set the expectations very high for me here, which is dangerous. But I'm gonna try my best to live up to those high expectations. So let me just share my screen. So I'm going to start by showing some stuff in the Copilot CLI. If you haven't already used the Copilot CLI, then definitely give it a try. It's super easy to install. You can just install it by running npm install -g github/copilot, and then you're going to get it. What is the Copilot CLI? It's pretty simple. It's like the agent that you have in VS Code, except instead of running an IDE, it runs in your terminal. I wouldn't say that it's like better or worse than what you have in your IDE. I think it just comes down to like different people like different things, and that's okay. We don't all have to like using the same things, and we can have like different products, different tools for different people and how they like working. And the example I want to show today is kind of maybe a little bit interesting and a bit weird in that I'm gonna kind of confess that I don't only use the Copilot CLI for doing coding. I use it for doing other things as well, because it's useful to have an agent that can use my computer and do stuff for other kinds of tasks as well. So one of the things that I do relatively frequently, because I'm, sharing demos and like sharing kind of examples of my products being used, is editing videos and cutting them up. So I'll do like a screen recording that's maybe like 5 minutes long, and then I'll want to take like a specific 20 seconds from it or a specific 1 minute from it or something like that, and take it into its own file so that I can share it. And if you've ever used FFmpeg, which is like a very popular tool for doing these kind of video editing things in the command line, you will know that like the command line arguments are pretty insane and confusing and hard to learn. So whilst I like do this video editing stuff somewhat frequently, I don't do it often enough to like actually remember how to use it. So every single time, in the old days, I went to Google to get advice like on how do I use this tool, like what are the arguments, so I'd end up on Stack Overflow. But now I use an LLM to do it. I use an agent to help me to do it. But one of the things that I've found often doing that is that the models, both like OpenAI models and Anthropic models, make some common mistakes from my perspective in how they use FFmpeg. And they like every single time you use it, make the same mistakes that mess up your video. And one example I've got is like, I don't actually understand how any of this works, but there's a thing in videos called keyframes. And what I find is like when I try to cut a video up, it will have like weird black sections at the beginning and the end. And every single time I ask an agent to do that, it always messes it up in that way, which is very annoying. But I don't necessarily want to put that in my custom instructions, because like doing video editing is like 0.1% of the stuff that I do with my agent. And it's just like essentially rubbish in the context window that's not useful most of the time. So this is a great example of how I can use a skill to help me to do stuff better. And I'm going to use a slightly different example to what we saw with Harald. So Harald showed kind of having skills inside your repository, but with the Copilot CLI, and I think this is coming to VS Code as well soon, we also have the ability for you to kind of have skills that live in your home directory. So instead of just having it for one repository, you can just have a skill for you as a person. So for the Copilot CLI, we store them in .copilot in the home directory, and we have a .copilot/skills. And in there, I've created a skill called video editing, and I can jump into that. And you can see it's super, super simple. It's just that skill.md file that we've already been talking about. So if I just open that up, we can see how that file kind of looks and works. So it has a simple name. It has a description. So here I have this thing where it says, invoke this skill whenever you are asked to edit a video. Because I found when I was using this that if I didn't put something like that, it would often just ignore me and not do what I wanted it to do. Then I've got a bunch of instructions here, which are basically explaining like how you deal with this keyframe issue, like how you do this video cutting in a way that doesn't lead to weird results. And it has a few other tips in here as well on like how to speed up and how to slow down videos. Like I actually, unsurprisingly, used Copilot to write this skill. So I talked about the things that I wanted to be able to do and the problems that I'd had and asked it to help me to write a skill to do that. So that's kind of the setup there. And now I'm going to jump into the Copilot CLI to actually see that in action. So I'm going to run Copilot. I like running it with the -- banner R because then you get a nice fancy animation when it loads. And I like seeing that, especially if I'm doing a demo. And to be honest, I like seeing it every time. So I have it there. And then in the latest version of the CLI, we have a /skills list command. So we can quickly see what skills we have installed. And it will show me personal skills that are for my user. And it will also show me like skills in my project. And now I know that it's there, I can now actually try to use it. So I'm going to say to Copilot, like, can you take the last 20 seconds from movie.mp4 and put them in a output.mp4 file? So before I had to like go on Google or Stack Overflow or whatever to like find out how to do this and then like hack around and try a bunch of things. And now Copilot can do it for me. So in the CLI, we have this experience where when the skill gets invoked, we just show a little thing in the timeline. So you can see that the skill has been pulled into context just to kind of give you that understanding of what's going on. Then the first thing it's doing, in my prompt, I said the last 20 seconds. And in order to do that, the first thing it has to figure out is like, how long actually is this video that you've given me? So it's going to run a command in order to do that. And I'm going to say, yes, like go ahead and do that. We can see here it figured out it's 40.27 seconds long. Very precise. I like that it's got 6 decimal places just to make sure that we're really certain about how long the video is going to be. And then it knows how long it is. And now it can run a command to actually make that edit for me. And because it has the skill, it isn't going to make that annoying keyframes mistake and leave me with like a weird black part at the start of the video. It's going to give me exactly what I wanted. There we go. It's doing it now. Finish. Done. I extracted it. So this is a nice, like, I think really practical example of using a skill. You know, it's not saying I'm doing all the time, so it probably doesn't make sense to have it in my custom instructions, but it can pull it in and add that extra context when I want to do this kind of task. And maybe this isn't relevant to you. Like, you're probably not a weird person like me who like uses the Copilot CLI to like do video editing, but there probably are other examples that maybe are a little bit like this that are useful for you.
Well, I think this is super cool because it kind of gets to the example that I just had, which is like image resizing. Like I'm building iOS apps all the time and I'm building websites all the time. I need to resize images. I need to work with SVGs all the time, which are super complex. And that wallpaper website is just that. Like, how often am I adding a wallpaper? Well, not that often. But when I do, I need it to very much understand how I resize and where I put the files and where I do everything. Like you're saying, you might be working on like a video website, right? And this might be a core piece of functionality where you are literally putting different brand assets and things all over the place. And now you have this skill that's with you all the time, no matter where you go.
Yeah.
That's super cool. I like that some of the niceties there of the CLI. I'm sure that Harald and the VS Code team will steal some of the niceties of what skill was run and when it was parsed, and we'll get a /skills. Harald, get on that. So
yeah, there's already tons of feedback. Like one is for tools, you can nicely select which tools are available doing a run. So for skills, you might also eventually reach a point like I have 50 skills installed. Like I don't want to, and they're in my user folder because like sometimes I want to extract a video, but then suddenly you talk about like some other video piece on your website, and then suddenly you track always reads the other skill. And then as it's all context, right? And especially in this one, it can be also a large document, as I showed with the computational art. So it's going to be interesting how to basically make skills behave at scale without constantly readjusting the description to like, oh, it triggered because I talked about art. Like I need to just like, don't use this when I just talk about art or something. So that's going to be still like the control layer for users too. Going to be interesting. Also, I think in this demo is what is highlighted that I think one question I get, like I get many questions about skills, like the two questions, like how is it different than all the other stuff, like instructions, and I think we talked about that one, but like how is it different than MCP? I think that's an interesting one because there is this control layer in all the agents that you still get script execution, you still like command execution and script execution, and you can confirm it. So it's a really good control layer to understand like what's being executed because of a skill and then still being in charge versus a lot of skills run scripts in VMs and other places where you might not even have control about when it runs, how it runs, what the inputs are. But this is, I think, the some of those control layers will help to make skills more approachable, that you can just try out skills because you're still in charge to hitting, yes, execute this at the point in time, and which makes them also more composable than maybe other primitives.
That's cool. Now, what I like here so far is that these same exact skills, you could just pick that skill up anywhere, right? In VS Code, but also in the Cloud Agent, correct, Tim? Because I don't know if you know, Tim. It's a quick little humble brag. I'll remove your screen so you can bring up your other one. The Cloud Agent team, when the mission control was coming out, they did reach out to me and they said, "Hey, James, I see that you're a power user of the Cloud Agent. We would like for you to demo this, blah, blah, and try out some of the new features." I'm not going to humble brag that maybe I use the Cloud Agent all the time, but I have this philosophy is that before I sign out for the day at work, I assign something to the Cloud Agent. Before I go to bed, I assign something from the Cloud Agent. And when I wake up in the morning, I assign something to the Cloud Agent. And like, when you're like in the shower and like your best ideas are like there in the shower, somehow, I don't know what it is, something about showering just unlocks magic like ideas. Well, we just have our cell phones. I just open the GitHub mobile app and I always just assign something. So it's like, get out of a shower, have an idea, assign it. And the cool part yesterday, my power was out for 5 hours here. And I joked to Pierce, because like, is everything okay? I'm like, I don't know if I've written more code in my life when the power has been out for 5 hours because I have 18 ongoing tasks right now in the Cloud Agent, and I'm reviewing them and merging them and then just downloading like the new builds of my iOS app. I'm sitting here and I'm doing an entire new achievement system. I kicked it off before we streamed because why waste an hour when I could be coding at the same time? So I'm a big fan of the Cloud Agent. If anyone knows me, it's my favorite demo on stage is to talk to my phone. And then by the end of the session, I am reviewing that code inside of VS Code, which is amazing. And Tim, many people do know you from the Cloud Agent space as well. But so can I use these skills there as well?
Yeah, you can. And thanks for being an ambassador for the coding agent in the cloud as well. Always love to have fans out there. It's a super cool tool. I mean, I have to say that given that I work on it, but it's something that I'm using more and more every day. And it's great to hear from other people using it as well. So if you're not familiar, Copilot Coding Agent is basically an agent that works in the cloud in the background. So instead of having to have like VS Code running on your machine or the CLI open, you can start off tasks, then just like shut your laptop, disconnect from the internet, completely unplug, and that's still going to just keep on running in the background. You can parallelize many things at the same time. So in my typical work day, I probably got Copilot working on 2 or 3 things at once most of the time, and I can kind of manage that process. And to join VS Code and the CLI, we've added support for that. We've added support for agent skills here, and I'm gonna show a quick demo of how that works in practice and a nice coding use case that I found for skills. So this is one of my open source projects. It's just kind of a simple API built in TypeScript. And currently it uses express.js, which is a kind of popular, but maybe slightly, you might say, old school framework for like building APIs. There's nothing wrong with it, but it's not like the most performant or modern option for doing this kind of stuff. So I was kind of thinking about this, and something that I hear a lot from developers wanting to do with agents is like helping them to do migrations and upgrades and things like that. So this project is not a great example because it's so small, but if you've got a big API, let's say you work at GitHub and you run the GitHub API, you've got thousands, maybe tens of thousands of APIs. And if you're going to do a migration to a new tool or a new stack, then that's going to be a lot of work, and there's going to be a process you want to follow loads of times. And I think that's actually a great use case for a skill. So I made a skill called the Express to Fastify migration skill. And what this is designed to do is basically teach Copilot how to migrate from Express, which is the framework that I'm using now, to a different, more performant one, more modern one called Fastify. So I have this skill here, which basically explains the process to run through in order to do that upgrade. So it's quite structured, you know. It starts with like checking what APIs there are. Then it has like a benchmark to understand what the performance is before and after, so you can actually see the improvements that you're making. And importantly, it also has a step of like making sure that the API doesn't change when you do this migration, because that's something you're going to want to be super careful of if you're doing a migration. Is like, are you actually breaking things, or are you leaving things in the same way that they were before? And I actually did a bunch of iteration again with Copilot to write this skill, because the first time I wrote it, I found that basically it kind of said, oh, maybe you might want to do this process this way. But what I found is like, it just ignored it and would like, you know, do step 1 and then skip straight to step 6. And it wouldn't do the benchmarking, and it wouldn't do the checks to make sure that the API hadn't changed. So I kind of asked Copilot like, man, why did you ignore me? And it came up with this different version of like mandatory workflow. You must complete each phase in order. And this is the version that we landed on that works. So this is the skill. Let's just see how we trigger it. So to do that, I'm going to use this thing that we have on GitHub now called the agents panel. And this is just a window that we can open anywhere on GitHub to give tasks to the cloud agent. There are a bunch of other ways you can do this as well. So you can assign an issue to Copilot. We've got an integration into vscode that I've talked about on vscode Live before, and a bunch of other ways as well. It's connected to Slack and GitHub Mobile and so many other things. And what we do now is just type in our prompt into this box. So I'm going to say convert, or actually I'm going to say migrate the API from Express to Fastify. I'm going to use Claude Opus because that's my favorite model at the moment. And then I'm going to hit start a pull request. And now that kind of fires off this task that is going to run in the background, and Copilot's going to go and do its thing. And then once it's done, it's going to open a pull request for me and request my review. Now, this is unsurprisingly going to take a little while. So rather than like trying to use this example, I'm going to go back to one that I did earlier, because we don't want to just watch Copilot working for ages and ages. So if we go through this, we've got a bunch of logs from Copilot where I asked it to do this task. And very early in the process, we have this point where it says activate Express to Fastify migration skill. So it quickly identifies that this skill is a good fit for my task and pulls that into the context window. And now it's able to actually follow this process that I've told it to follow. So it does an inventory, which is the first step that I give it in the skill. So telling it, like figuring out what APIs there are. It then captures all the responses of the APIs that are there now so that it can actually kind of compare them at the end. It runs a benchmark. So we get some information about the performance of the API before the migration. And then it runs through and actually makes the file changes and stuff like that. You know, like the agent that you have in the CLI and in VS Code, it's smart. So it like runs your tests and runs the linter and things like that to make changes. And then where we really see the magic in this workflow is that it's actually followed those steps that I set in my skill. So it now at the end actually checks that it hasn't broken the API and made changes that it didn't mean to change. And it runs a benchmark at the end. And somewhere further down, you can kind of see here, so it notes that it's improved the request per second by 73% with this migration, which is a pretty big improvement from just switching a framework. One of the things that I really liked in here is that when it was doing the benchmarking, it ran into a problem because it found that it was hitting rate limits in the API when it was trying to benchmark it, which is kind of funny. So what does it do? Well, it decides just to remove the rate limits for a little while so that it can do the benchmark, which is actually a totally reasonable thing to do to test the performance. So this was another funny case. I wanted to show two examples today, like one of something not coding related, my kind of video editing example, and one of this kind of Copilot working on code example. And if we click view pull request, then we can see the pull request that Copilot created. So wrote me a nice pull request body. And then when it was done, it requested review from me. And then I can just review this as I would with a pull request created by a human.
That's very cool. That's awesome. We did get a good question here because I love that we can use them sort of everywhere. Now, Marshall is asking, does the GitHub Skills replace Claude Skills when using Copilot? Can you use either of them? Like, will Cloud Agent, CLI look anywhere? Is there specific? Like, what's the jam there? And maybe Harald, will start with VS Code. Maybe they all work different. I don't know. How does VS Code work, Harald?
So we try to align between the CLI and the VS Code logic for skills. So we basically first look into your GitHub skills in the repo. We look into your user Copilot skills on your machine, and then we look at the Claude skills and potentially other places. We'll see what the ecosystem. That's kind of the main place we expect to have users collect their skills right now. So that's kind of our like 1P places we know skills, and then we dedupe by name in the end. So that's the name field is mandatory. So hopefully you have a well-scoped name that we can then use to figure out, like, maybe if you have them in different places, maybe you started in your user and then you moved it into your project and fine-tuned it a bit more. So hopefully that order is as expected.
Nice. Tim, what about like CLI and Cloud Agent stuff?
Yeah, same situation in the CLI. That works in the same way that Harald has just described for VS Code. The coding agent in the cloud is a little bit different because it doesn't have like a home directory. So we don't have that part, but it will just load stuff that's in your repository, and it supports both the like GitHub/skills path and also the Claude/skills path. So we're trying to be backwards. We're trying to be like, generally our approach here has been to be very wide on this stuff, and like, why should we only support one place and why should we only support one kind of custom instruction? Like, we want to make it really easy to come and use Copilot, even if you maybe use another tool some of the time. So wide compatibility is what we're all about.
Yeah, I love that. Makes a lot of sense. It's pretty easy in code to be like, check here or here. Just a little or statement in there. Although it does get unruly if there's way too many places to check. Now, I know, Tim, for custom agents, we rolled out, like for business and enterprise, maybe it's just enterprise, like organizational level agents. Like, so if I have like a WinForms agent, I have a C# agent, and I have like a WPF agent that are like, because I'm a .NET developer, so I have like agents all about like building those types of apps, like especially with Cloud Agent. Is there organizational level skills or instructions for Cloud Agent?
So for Cloud Agent, we do have organizational level instructions, but we don't have organizational level skills at the moment. So that is something that we're going to be looking to add in the near future, both for organizations and enterprises. Like, feels like a no-brainer to let people like manage these things at different levels and share stuff across their team. Obviously more deduplication, but it's nice for these ones, as Harald said, like they have a name and we can use that to deduplicate things, as long as people use reasonably unique names. Then we don't want to keep sending the same skill to the model 10 times, because that's just going to be confusing. But as long as we can kind of separate them out and keep them unique, then it will work nicely and we can share stuff from all over the place. Very
cool. That's awesome. I do love that. I'm going to share my screen one more time because Harald shared it in the beginning. So if you are using the VS Code here, Insiders build, you want to update at least to yesterday's or today's. So I'm going to bring up my screen here. And Tim, I imagine the CLI, you just update, and Cloud Agent, it just lights up automatically, right? For this stuff. Yeah. For VS Code, you want to go and just type in skills. You can do it with an S. It has to be an S, not a Z. I think Burke did a Z. It did not come up. So you type in skills, and there's agent.mds, agents.md files, kind of like instructions. But then you'll see use agent skills experimental. So this is kind of what we're talking about. It looks for .github/skills, Copilot skills, Claude skills, or Claude skills, like in the root namespace as well of where they're at. So you can learn more about them there. And they're on the read tool if available as well. So which is cool. Very, very cool. Awesome. So if you haven't enabled it, go check it out in Insiders. Harald mentioned it's probably going to drop in to stable in early January. So a little New Year's celebration. But we did a survey. I've been using YouTube surveys a lot. We did a survey actually. Almost 55% of people watching on YouTube are using either Insiders or both. So rock
Thank you.
Insiders. It's like you wake up every morning. Not only has the cloud agent finished a bunch of code for you, but additionally, you have a new update to VS Code every single day with goodies inside of there. And then if you're like, oh no,
Yeah.
something went wrong, you can just hop over to stable. But I just rock Insiders all the time of
I
VS and
always
VS
say,
Code.
yeah, insiders are the people with skills right now, like the agent skills. Stable has cloud skills.
Wow.
But that's that naming is just so sweet. Like now we have skill issues that people file. It's yeah, so
Oh
it's
my
gonna
gosh.
be pretty fun.
Wow, wow, wow. All right. Well, on that joke, I think we can end the year on a high note with agent skills. Tim, Harald, thank you so much for coming on and showing this all off. I really appreciate it. It's an honor and a privilege to be on the stream with the two of you.
Thank you for having me.
Thanks,
And
James.
thanks everyone for tuning in this year. There's so much new goodies. I believe that Burke and Pierce are recording the final VS Code Insiders podcast in person in the middle of somewhere America. I have no idea this is going to happen. So make sure you go to vscodepodcast.com, drop a link in the chat over here, and subscribe to the VS Code Insiders podcast. You get in-depth behind the scenes with the engineering and PM teams that build the most amazing tools in the entire world. But that's going to do it for this. Let it cook. So until next year,